Welcome to the Queens of Moxie, a podcast all about empowering women to reclaim their moxie, their power. I'm Mary Kay Campbell, and I'm the host of this program. Each week, we'll talk with amazing women who have reclaimed their moxie, overcome challenges, and are living their best life. So let's get started. Welcome to Queens of Moxie. We are glad you're here today. I am so excited to have Lauren Howard, or L2, as she's likes to be called, here with us today. If you were on LinkedIn, you probably have seen posts from her. And really, that's how I got connected with her. She posted a number of things and I kept liking them. And I finally thought, I need to reach out to this woman because I really believe in what she's saying, and what she says resonates with me. So I am just delighted to have Lauren here today. And let me give you guys just a little bit of background about her. I also love the fact that she went to my alma mater. I went to UCF for my undergraduate, and that's where she went to school. Few years in between us, but just a little bit. But she also got her degree in journalism and mass communication, which I got mine from UCF and my master's from UNC Chapel Hill. And she has a company called L2, and they're actually in the middle of rebranding because she offers two service lines, so to speak. One is about her passion, which is helping to provide telehealth and medical resources to people in a digital platform, and so that it removes barriers for people. And having worked in healthcare myself, I can greatly appreciate the importance of access to healthcare and good quality care. And the second one is really the one that we're going to focus the most of our energy on today, and that's what is going to be continued called L2, which is really about giving a voice to women in a professional setting and helping to change that dialogue and to change that script that so many of us have been raised with and continue, unfortunately, to just subscribe to because maybe we don't have the strength or the power to change things. And so I just think it's remarkable and amazing what Lauren has done. And I'm just delighted that you're here today. So thank you.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I've given everybody a little bit of background about you, but I would love if you could just give us a little snapshot of how you started in your career. And it's been a little over a year now, right? That you kind of made this major shift and talk about how that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is in healthcare. I've been in just about almost every aspect of healthcare, it feels like. But I started in behavioral health and medication-assisted treatment clinic management. I did that for about 10 years. Really is the kind of the part of healthcare that most speaks to my heart because it's the part that I know so intently inside and out. Again, ran clinics for about 10 years. Left those clinics to go work in digital health after we had built out a pretty successful telehealth program within our clinic, which at the time people thought we were just absolutely out of our minds. This was before telehealth had really caught on. It was this kind of newfangled idea that everybody thought was dangerous and the demise of healthcare. And so built a really successful program within our clinic, and then got asked to switch over to a healthcare software company where they were building out a telehealth platform. And I was there for 5 years. I got to build everything that touched our clients from an operations and strategic standpoint. I was running about 7 teams, everything from contract execution throughout the life of the agreement, except for development. And incredible experience. I mean, they trusted me with probably way more than I had experience to be trusted with. I just got to build and create, and was there for about 5 years, and was there through the pandemic, which was like 100 hours a week for a year. And it was so much. And then realized one day that I hadn't seen my kids in a year, and that I was exhausted, and that it was, there were 10 people doing what I was doing myself for a long time. And so it was okay. It was time. It was okay time to let go, which was really hard for me because at that point I was very much in a headspace where I need to retire at this job because I'm never going to be able to get another one. And there was just all of this, ingrained negativity in my path because I felt like I had made everything up as I went and there was no training and guidance or anything. And so left that job March of 2021, laid around in a pile on the floor for a couple of weeks trying to figure out, how I would even stand up on these feet, even though it was voluntary. I decided to. But everything felt like my identity was wrapped up in that job, and there was just how was I going to be anything without it? And that was a hard conversation to have with myself, and one that I had to have with myself a lot.
Yep.
A lot. It was not a one-time decision. I had to keep reminding myself regularly that there was more to me than whatever that title and job were.
Yes.
And through that process, started posting on LinkedIn because I didn't have a network. I didn't have anybody to talk to. It was, I had been very much in a silo for 5 years, and I wanted to learn about my industry outside of the very small scope that I knew. And that kind of exploded very unexpectedly. And it's turned into my consulting business, which is the joy of my life. It has turned into this opportunity where I get to share things that I've been through, and people can respond that they experienced the same thing. And that was kind of both life-changing and life-affirming for me, because for the first time it occurred to me that I was not isolated in this. Like, other people were going through the same thing. And then it became a way to really kind of be almost a beacon to tell people, like, hey, we're over here dealing with these things. It's not just you. Come hang with us. And that's how we ended up here. And it has created this whole world that I didn't know was possible. And none of it would have happened if I hadn't realized that I needed to figure out who I was without this title or this goal that was all wrapped up in dollars and cents and things that mattered to other people, or things that I would appear to be to other people, but had nothing to do with personal satisfaction or doing things that mattered to me or anything like that.
Right. And for people who know my story, I had continued to climb up the ranks and serve in leadership roles in strategic marketing and communications. And on the outside, it looked like everything was just great. Had a great house, great kids, wonderful salary, all things that you think are what you should be doing. And when I was in this really bad car accident a year and a half ago, I was sitting in the ambulance, and I've not been in an ambulance before. And there's bright fluorescent lights, and they're hooking up all these monitors to me. And there's this, my head was split open from front to back. And there was a spot in the back that they kept checking because the tissue was protruding, and they weren't sure if it was my brain. And I'm sitting in this ambulance with all of these monitors hooked up to me, and then putting stuff on me. And I thought, what am I doing? What, and it was exactly what you said, except it took me a lot longer to get to that epiphany. I had that whisper in my ear for years, but I've been a single mom for 15 years, and there were limitations that prevented me from doing it, but absolutely, I was doing what society said I should be doing. And it wasn't fulfilling. I wasn't following where I was being led and what I know to be my calling. And it unfortunately for me, it took getting in that car accident for me to stop and put the brakes on and say, all right, I'm not doing what I want to do. And so, Queens of Moxie is all about helping women who are in a personal transition to reclaim their power, to reclaim their moxie. And I love the fact that you did that, and it didn't happen, overnight. Like you said, you had huge responsibilities on you, and anyone that worked in healthcare and anyone that worked with telehealth, particularly during the pandemic, really had this enormous amount of pressure put on them and responsibility. And so it is no wonder that you had to stop and say, uncle, I've got to stop because I can't continue at this rate. But what I think is so amazing is that you took that opportunity and really had no plans for where you are now at all, but you just started speaking your truth. And you started really talking about empowering women and changing that discourse, changing the conversation, and questioning, why are we subscribing to this mindset? Why are we continuing these archaic perspectives? And remind us, because there are people who are listening to this who don't necessarily know you. How many followers do you have right now on LinkedIn?
Let me check. I'm not sure.
I have it up. Let me see if I can pull it up for you.
33,485.
Yeah.
It's a couple.
Just a couple, over almost 34,000 followers.
Right. But I feel like it's also important to point out that I am like a painfully introverted person who has like 4 real friends. So it's not like this is my baseline, and this is all bizarre to me. It is all wacky to me that there are people who like voluntarily look for the things I say, because I can't wrap my brain around it. But it all came from that same thing, which is I experienced this, and it started, I don't honestly know how it started specifically, aside from me saying like, I had this experience and thinking that it would probably be isolating, but not really knowing how else to communicate it. And instead of getting what I thought would be, the answer, which was, you're a well-paid executive, why would you get to complain? I got huge numbers and huge outpouring of, oh my gosh, I went through the same thing and I thought it was just me. And that's when I realized that this imposter syndrome, this voice in the back of my head that's telling me all the time that somebody's going to find me out soon, I'm going to get discovered for the fact that I have no idea what I'm doing, is like the only person who's ever told me that is me.
Yep.
And by talking about that, all of a sudden I had this entire community of women around me going, oh wait, you do that too? And I'm going, yeah, like literally every day, like every single day.
Right.
And that's what it all grew from. I mean, aside from the fact that as of late, I've been particularly spicy about calling people out on, just bringing bad things to the universe and not having women's best interest at heart at all. But it all boils down to the same thing, which is I very rarely run into a woman who isn't feeling that way.
Right.
We just don't talk about it.
Right. And why are we feeling this way? What is it that puts that in our mind? I mean, I have a 17-year-old daughter, and I see her questioning herself and her worth, and teenagers do that. Just, it's just the part of, unfortunately, those teenage years.
Right.
But as a mom, I'm sitting here going, what can I do to change this for her, to make this better for her? And the things that I felt all of my life, how can we change this? Because there probably is some imposter syndrome for men, but I don't know that it's at the level that women feel it. And I also find that women, and particularly in my age group, so I just turned 50 in May. So I am in that demographic of, my one child is already in college. I'm going to be an empty nest in a year from now. My mom passed away in February. So I've got aging parents. My dad is, dealing with some things, but how do you help support your dad? Who's been with, he was with my mom for 55 years.
Yeah.
So, you're dealing with that. I had this accident, and it totally made me take stock of what I'm doing career-wise. And every time I talk to a woman, particularly in my age bracket, they're like, you are describing my life. This is, and we're all feeling this sense of disillusionment and being overwhelmed and feeling a little bit lost. Like, and if you've defined yourself by your career, or you've defined yourself as being a spouse or a partner or a mom or a daughter, or, whatever those things are, if you take those things away and you haven't built up who you are personally, you feel very lost. You feel very confused. And so I'm such an advocate for helping women to define that before they have that traumatic event. For me, it was a car accident. Somebody else, it might be a loss of a job or health issues or whatever it might be. So I think it's fantastic that you did this at this point in your life. So what are some of the key things that you've learned through this process, and whether it's things that you personally have experienced or things that have been reflected back to you?
Um, I think I think probably the biggest thing, the most life-changing thing, which was the hardest thing for me to learn, but the quickest for me to adapt to, which is a little bizarre, um, is that isolation is fundamentally the problem normally. And I don't necessarily mean social isolation, but I mean letting ourselves lean into this idea that it's just me. And I
Mhm.
did that for a long time. I mean, we went through fertility treatments twice and nobody knew. Before our first child and before our second child, we didn't tell anybody because it just felt like something that I didn't need to talk to anybody about. I didn't want anybody in that part of our world. I didn't want them knowing what we're going on, what's going on with us. Man, if I did that now, I would have a group text of every person I've ever met that has been through it and been like, hey, here's the awful thing that's happening today, so that they can all say back, I remember those days. And remember, you were there last time you did this. And oh, you have 2 kids now. But I have a tendency to isolate and to believe things are only me and that other people will not understand.
Mhm.
And then I feel like when I do need to outreach to somebody, that nobody's going to care because it's just attention seeking.
Mm.
Screw
No, it's
that.
not. It's not.
That's not what it is. But
No.
we have developed these ideas that when women need support, it's because they're not strong enough on their own. And that's not the case.
No.
It's never the case. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned is that when I'm doing this thing, I had it over the weekend. I was swimming in my head trying to figure out what this next piece of the puzzle we're trying to put together for the business is. And 5 years ago, I just would have sat and made myself crazy. And when I got to a point where I was like, it's just not coming through, I went, okay, but I also know 20 different other female entrepreneurs who've been in this place in the last year. And we just started going back and forth. And then all of a sudden it was like, one of them said, how about stop working on this? Just go do something with your kids. And it just happened to be bath time. And I was like, all right, whatever. So we spent 30 minutes playing with bath toys and I got done and I was like, oh, my brain is working again. I
Yes.
can, I'm not spinning in that anxiety place. And so I think isolation in so many ways, you can be surrounded by people and still be isolated.
Absolutely.
And so talking about the things that you've experienced and understanding that that is part of forming human connection. I mean, for so long, human connection was storytelling. It
Right.
was passing stories down from family to family to family, so
Right.
that in 100 years you were telling the same stories. That's literally all we're doing now, but we
Yeah.
just are behind computer screens and more fragmented from each other.
Yes.
So I think that's probably the most important thing that I've learned this year. But I would say secondary to that is asking myself or asking other people who bring me their insecurities, who has actually told them that they can't do the thing that they think they can't do.
Mm.
Never once has anybody told me anybody other than themselves.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I do that a lot where I go, oh, I don't know if I can run this program. That's a lot of work. And I don't think I have the experience. And then I go, is anybody else saying? Nope, that's just me.
Right. Right.
If they believe, why don't I believe?
Right. Well, and it's that whole idea that would you talk to your friend,
To anybody else the way you talk to yourself.
anybody
Yeah.
else, the way
Yep.
and the language that we use with ourselves is brutal. It's so harsh. And I think it takes so much to step out of that and recognize, oh my gosh, I am not being supportive of myself.
Yeah.
And I have this great cartoon kind of thing, I don't know, meme, whatever you want to call it, where it's a really sharp pencil, and below it says, I wish I was more creative. And then right next to it is a box of crayons, and it says, I wish I was more precise, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is that we get in our heads and we think that we've got to do these different things. And the reality is, one, we all bring something valuable to the table. And, I am not good with tools. Like I hung up my whiteboard today. I put 4 holes in the wall. Honest to God, I measured, I used the level. There are 4 holes and they all have wall anchors in them. So they're not little holes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you literally go, oh my
I have
gosh.
a picture right there that when my husband takes it down, if we ever finally leave this house, I'm getting in so much trouble.
I know and I have 2 degrees. I'm an intelligent person. I know how to measure. It does not matter. And like I just kind of have to let go of that and say, okay, you know what? That's just not my thing. But you know what? If you want a story, if you want to talk to somebody and get to the heart of what makes them who they are, that's me. I'm all over it, And so instead of getting frustrated with the things that we can't do, like teaching a fish to climb a tree is never going to work. I think that was Einstein that said something about if you measure a fish's ability, whatever.
Yeah.
And instead focus on what we do well and where we add value. 1, you're going to be so much happier. 2, you're going to bring so much more to the table. And it's just going to be easy. It's kind of like that idea of your superpowers, right?
Right.
Like,
oh yeah.
I mean, people used to say to me, Mary Kay, your superpowers are storytelling and connecting with others. And I always was kind of like, what? Because for me, connecting with others and storytelling are just who I am. It's just ingrained in me. I don't think about it. And I never realized before that this was something unique. And then when enough people told me, I realized, oh, if it's something that comes really easily to you and you do really well with it and people tell you all the time you're doing really well with it, guess what? It's probably your superpower.
Well, right. It's funny you say that because everybody I get feedback all the time like, oh, you're such an excellent written storyteller. You have such a way with words. For years, and I mean years up until like a year ago, I wouldn't write for myself. I would only write for somebody else, whether it was through a job or I did ghostwriting for a while. I knew I could write, but I had this idea that nobody wanted to hear it in my voice.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that came from. I mean, just general, my own insecurities. But the feedback that I get now is that when I write in my own voice, it's actually impacting people.
Yeah.
And I never would have believed that before.
Right.
And it started with just getting over myself. I mean, honestly, that was, I had this idea that everybody was going to think I was crazy and attention seeking if I started posting on the internet. And I wasn't worried about negative feedback. I was worried about what people said or what people were thinking that they weren't telling me. And somebody said to me, I don't even remember who it was now, but somebody said to me just about a year ago, what somebody thinks of you is not your business.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, I guess that's true. And then she said, and if they're thinking, if you're posting, that's what she said, if you're posting and you're not posting because you think somebody is thinking negatively about you, the reality is they're not thinking about you like at all. So it's freedom because they're not thinking about you. And then it's freedom because if they are thinking about you and they're not telling you, it's not your business.
Yeah.
So the only thing that was holding me back was me.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, and it's the idea that I saw a meme again about this. I love quotes. I have quotes everywhere. I'm sure as a writer you do too. Like hundreds of them, file after file. But it was something along the lines of, you don't like everybody, so why do you expect everyone to like you? And it's like, oh, that's true. I don't like everybody.
Right.
I mean, it's like a mind blown thing, it totally changes your paradigm to realize I don't have to, everybody doesn't have to like me,
Well, and then I will also say that leaning into kind of being unabashedly whoever I am that day, and it changes from day to day, let's be honest. It gives people the ability to self-select out and to just go, yeah, I'm not here for this. And then I get way less noise from people who I don't have any interest in interacting with, period.
Right.
You
Right.
know, am I certain that there are people who have unfollowed me in the last week? I know there are people who have blocked me in the last week. I got tagged on a list of like LinkedIn influencers, and one of them I had thought deleted her own account. And then I was like, well, if she's tagged on this list, she still exists. And somehow I'm blocked. And I've literally never interacted with this person. Never. Not since maybe like one time when we connected a year ago. So like the only reason that she would have done this is because she doesn't like something about what I have to say. And cool, thanks for doing the work for me, dude.
Right. Right.
Like, thank you. Appreciate
Exactly.
it.
Exactly.
So anyway, you know, there people will do the work for you when you are unabashedly yourself and authentically who you are, because if they don't like it, they'll disappear, or
Yeah.
they'll like make it clear that they don't like it and make the job easy for you to be like, oh, this is not a person I want to interact with.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right. Right.
That's okay.
Well, and you know what? It's that whole idea of go where you are celebrated, not where you are merely tolerated.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And when we can start to change that internal dialogue, like it's not that there's something wrong with me. It's not that I'm not good enough. It's that those aren't my peeps. It's not my tribe. I'm
Right.
not appreciated for what, you know what? I recognize I am loud. I am colorful. I fill up a room, Lauren. I mean, I do.
Yeah.
I recognize that. And I am not for everybody. I'm not. And I finally gotten to a place where I'm like, if I'm not for you, that's okay. It really is. It's good, because I do bring value when I bring those things, and recognizing, hey, I add value by being me. And if it's not the value you need or want, it's okay. It really is, you know. But getting to that place where you turn off that dialogue that you're not good enough, that there's something wrong with you, that you've got to change who you are. All of those things have to happen in order for you to step into your own.
Yeah,
you know, and
absolutely.
I think that's so important. I want to be sensitive to your time. And so I wanted to ask you if you had any words of advice or any parting thoughts for our guests that are listening here today, like what they should do to really reclaim that. And also I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your group, and so that, and I'll put it in the show notes. So, you know, you'll send me the link and stuff, and we'll get that up there so people can also find out more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the best, you know, if I'm going to give out one piece of advice, and I don't usually give out advice, but if I'm going to give out one piece of advice to anybody, I think the thing that has most changed my life and my perspective in the last year is just being willing to ask, whatever it is. If you want a meeting with someone, ask. If you want to know what someone thinks about something, ask. I used to spend a lot of time worried about feedback, assuming it was going to be bad. And it's not, for the most part, or if it is, it's constructive feedback that then it's actionable and you can fix. And so I think when you're on this quest, like I was, to quote unquote get over myself, and get out of my own head, the thing that was the most humbling but also the most rewarding was just asking, hey, would you mind just a quick virtual coffee? I want to hear more about what you're doing. Or, hey, you know, I'm putting together this event and I would just really love if you would repost it so to get a little more exposure. Would that be okay? Like, what's the worst thing people say? No, it was a no when you didn't ask anyway.
Right.
And so that has been a really big game changer for me. And it's something we talk about a ton in the community that I run, which really came from this group of women that kind of emerged to me through spending time on LinkedIn and building that community. It's called The High Rise. It's at ourhighrise.com. And we are just a group of professional women, a lot of whom are in transition from one role to another, but some of whom are just figuring out what this life looks like. And we focus on deprogramming from the things that we have been taught that women in the workplace should be. And whether that means, you know, we had somebody who was negotiating a new job offer and she was like, I know we're not supposed to talk about money, but I really need help here. And I said, who said we're not supposed to talk about money? The idea that we're not supposed to talk about money was to make it so that people could underpay you because you didn't know what other people were making. Let's talk about money.
Right.
And so she goes, I've never thought about it that way. And so now we have very open discussions about salaries and worth. And, you know, when you get an offer that doesn't meet what you want and how you address that. And all of these things are ideas that that have kind of emerged from undoing what has been done. And that's really what we spend all of our time doing. And it's a great group. They're quirky and funny and supportive, and they show up for each other around the clock, which blows my mind. But they really are exactly who they say they are, and that's amazing. And we have some events that we're rolling out, and we have some materials that we share. But if nothing else, it's a place for authenticity in the work, or on the internet, where you can bring every part of your job together and say, this is who we are. And it's been life-changing for me. I mean, I know I started it, but I did not expect to get this much out of it myself. And
Right.
it's the first place I go when great things happen. It's the first place I go when bad things happen. It's the first place I go when I have a meme to share. It's just that group. It's like a family. And I say that as somebody who hates when jobs call themselves a family. Drives me bonkers, but they really they look out for each other like ways I've never seen. And I'm so proud of it.
That's great. That's great. Well, Lauren, I so appreciate your time today. And I love your insights. And I think that everyone who's listening today is going to really find wonderful value. And if they aren't following you on LinkedIn, I hope that they start following you now, because you just have such wonderful insights, and it's provocative. And so you're right. There are going to be people who go, that either resonates with me or it doesn't resonate with me.
Yeah, that's not what I'm here for. That's fine.
But you know what? It also starts the discussion. It also starts you thinking about things. And if we don't have that open dialogue, we're never going to change perceptions. And so I love it. I think it's great. And I really appreciate it. So thank you again.
Absolutely. It's nice to spend this time with you.
You too. And I know I'll talk to you again soon. So thank you again, Lauren.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on the Queens of Moxie podcast. Each week we come to you with amazing women who have overcome obstacles, who are living their best life and reclaiming their moxie. We hope to see you next week.